Vai. Ricomincio. Sì, vieni di cara, mi fa. Okay, let's start again. We start soft with a video. No, non si sente?
Just exam.
Vediamo un po' se riesco. No, perché non si sente.
Abbiamo fatto il duplica. Aspetta, ecco, bravo. Adesso
Allora, dove stavamo? Mi piace.
il video dov'è? Dove stava aperto? Dove stava fuori?
Qua.
Eccolo qua. Presentazione. Non lo fa neanche vedere, ma prima si vedeva dallo schermo. Ecco, ok? Si sente, ma non so da dove sta. Sento l'audio, ma non so da dove sta parlando. Ah, sì, immagino. Ok. Please.
Okay. I find interesting this video for some reasons, not just because it's a more innovational video for you to think out of the box, but because it summarizes some of the things that I said before, basically before the existence of some links to our way of thinking, and especially the discussion regarding the boxes. The thing that you have to keep in mind is not that you are closely in box, but that the people you are talking to is closely in box. So you have to understand how you can enter the box. Because if you see, we have a very big box in which we live our social life, but we have a smaller box in which we live our mental life. And each box is different from the others. So it's very difficult, but for us, it's mandatory to find a common language that can enter the most number of boxes possible. This was the message that I wanted to convey you. I didn't stop the video because anyway, I think that it's motivational, it's interesting in a more general point, from a more general point of view. But what I want to stress for you is the fact that the people you are talking to, the people for you need to communicate to, each one of them has its own boxes, and you have to find ways to enter them. Okay, now let's come back to the story that we were talking about, and imagine that after the bonfire and the story told by the old hunter, a young hunter finds himself in the situation similar to the situation of the described by the more experienced hunter. So he found himself in front of a saber-tooth tiger. Don't see Tyrannosaurus, we say. And what will he do? If he reacts at, as the old hunter said to him, he will come back to the field. Otherwise, he will die. But when he comes back, what will he tell to the other hunters? He will say, the old hunter was right. His advice saved my life. What does it mean from the point of view of the old hunter? That his prestige is increasing. The next time that he will give another advice, the people will probably likely believe to what he's saying to his advice. And so he's become a more influential member of his tribe. So it's very important for us as a public communicator, especially from the point of view of intelligence communication, to let our prestige and our ability grow down just by giving correct information. Because giving correct information will improve our credibility in front of the audience. So it means that communication is a tool that can help us to achieve personal affirmation that we can use for our personal purposes as well as for our professional purposes as the civil servants or employee in your business. But the fact that communication is a tool to improve your personal affirmation has become more and more important with the advent of social media, because social media is giving everyone the possibility to communicate. So communication has become one of the most used tools, not only one of the most important, one of the most used tools by people that are able to find some sort of personal affirmation. Now, you probably haven't seen that I like to make questions. So my question is, what are social media for? Social media are for information, for communication, for social relationships, for work relationship, to make new friendship. What is the purpose of the social media?
My opinion, if you use it the right way, every one of it is the answer.
Okay, this is a good point of view. Because you talk from the point of view of users. But the important thing is social media is being used for other purposes by those who drive it. The real business model of social media is based on advertising. They don't care the kind of communication that is going on the social media platform. What they need is to understand what kind of advertising is works well for you, so they can sell this space and this advertising to the friends of factories and make money. The real business model of social media platform is advertising. So social media are made for advertising. What does it mean? That there is the famous algorithm, so-called, but it's not real algorithm. There are many neural networks that modify some kinds of in unsurveilled way on human being and so on. But what do? They collect data about us, and they profile us, so they can understand which products we can be interested, what are our needs now, but they are so sophisticated that they can understand even what are our needs will be in the next future. And they collect these data that are used for better advertising for us. But they also use this data to a better profiling, because they want to increase our level of engagement. It means that the level of engagement is defined as the time that we spend on the social platform. The more we stay on the social platform, the more we give them data into the algorithms, and the more the algorithms can give us proposals as advertising. Also, if we stay on it, we don't stay on Facebook. If we stay on Facebook, we don't stay on TikTok. So the level of engagement is important also, because you don't go to other providers. The results of these things are these two important phenomena, which are called the echo chambers and polarization. Why this happens? Of course, to increase the level of engagement, the social media platform has to give us nice experience. And the studies have shown that people prefer to stay in an environment where they are surrounded by people who share the same interests, by people who share the same belief. And if you remember one of the bias, the confirmation bias, people tend to search for information that confirm their existing belief. If we expose a person on the social media or on studies or news that are against all belief, the experience will not be so good. So people tend to stay into environment where there is polarization, because everyone else has the same thought. And also echo chambers, because the same things will always be repeated. That will never be the exposure for different news about different point of views. And as social media are made for advertising, tools for social media is not a value in itself. And that's why there is space for fake news, there is space for conspiracy theories, there is space for actors that manipulate information for malefic strategic purposes.
Just waiting and the last slide. And one thing, this kind of use of social media, but also searching in be a threat against others. Because if you have a sort of filter bubble, I saw in the search engine people that think like me, and you go outside, and people think another way. This set against other.
Yes, this is, yes, we will talk about this later, because I hope the time, we will talk about strategic communication and one of the purposes of strategic communication, for example, if you are under attack of a style actor, this of style actor usually tends to increase the polarization of society. There are many places, especially in the last this years, after the Ukraine invasion, but in the past there were many examples. How effective they are, it's something that is controversial now, but they have some effect. Maybe they don't have actually changing people's mind, but they have actually changing people's behavior.
But for example, civil protection partners, we have a problem for the use of social media about weather. Because the proliferation of fake news about the weather for us is a threat against the credibility of our message. But this kind of message are very effective for some people.
Yes, they are very effective because, as you have seen, it's a bank.
Yes.
And normal bank, the normal bank, so deals with uncertainty, fear, and usually the fake news messages are built in such a way that they stress this kind of reactions. The official communication goes on the cortex, neocortex, and we see that when there is conflict, usually the inner part takes the lead. So that's why it's difficult to deal with. But in polemic management has done something that's found some of some negative risk. So why there are all these fake news conspiracy theories? Because people want to gain an advantage, can be economical, can be political, or they want that some people behave in a certain way, or they want to just discredit an opponent. The example of the civil protection and weather is just one of these cases. This is the thing. Forget this. The manipulation of information is not wasn't born together with social media. It already existed. Noam Chomsky, who is probably one of the most important theoretical professors in this field, he found out 10 strategies of manipulation through the traditional mass media. I will not read all of them because many of them have still used in the field. But the problem is that in traditional media, there were some mechanism of defense. The first mechanism of defense was intermediation. It means that when a fact happens, it's not new. It's not new in particular. Some journalists think that that fact is important, so in a sense it's very dramatic. Then the article goes to the head of the publishing newspaper, which reads the document, says, okay, the sources that you use are good, the rank is good, we can put this in that page or in the first page. So there is another passage before going to the eyes of the mass. And then all this kind of communication has to deal with the editorial line that is decided by the owner of the newspaper. So there were many levels of intermediation, and most of all, the effectiveness of this communication was strictly related to the credibility of the newspapers and the journalists. Now, every one of us has, from a political point of view, from a theoretical point of view, the same audience that can have a former Pulitzer Prize winner. Because on social media, if we build a news that becomes viral, we can reach even more people than very experienced journalists. So now we live in a world which is completely disintermediated from the point of view of communication. And I want to see if someone is reacting. Okay. This is, I didn't want to spend too much words about it, but I think that it's the case. There was a very famous Italian professor, Umberto Eco, that just at the beginning of the appearance of social media, told us that social media has given voice and visibility to a legion, I'm quoting this word, of imbeciles that could spread their stupid theories and have an audience. It means that if we have the stupid person of the town, every town has a stupid person which is virtually recognized, goes to the pub and says, "Help is flat," no one will believe him. And so his idea will remain confined inside the pub. But if there is a stupid flat earther in my town that is able to talk with the stupid flat earther living in Abu Dhabi or the stupid flat earther living in Canada, they can reach a number of people believing in a certain theory that it can make that theory enter the field of the social, political discussion. And this is what you see here is the overton window, which is a mechanism that is used to describe how new ideas come into the discussion on the social and civil society. First of all, there is an idea which is unthinkable if we think through. I don't want to use a single approach. For example, gay marriage. Gay marriage was unthinkable in the Middle Age, for example, even in the modern times. But then the idea of gay marriage, in some way, reached a number of people that thought it was good to think about it, but to become a radical idea. So that the idea that wasn't yet in the mainstream discussion, but was an idea that existed in the civil discussion. The more this idea becomes accepted, or even not accepted but spread the discussion, the more the idea moves in this scale until some of them can become able to influence the political decisions. Certain states, for example, gay marriage has been able to bring politicians to write laws that encourage or approve gay marriage, others that restrict it, and so on. What is the problem? Is that many of these stupid theories, before the advent of social media, didn't have the possibility to move from unthinkable to radical. and then make the first step of the discussion that will bring them to the discussion in a more widespread way. Now, the advent of social media has made the path inside the Overton window way more easy than in the past. And that's why there are so many student theories etc. There are deviants. And so, because the Overton window now is more easily opened than the past. And it depends on the fact that social media are not intermediated, and they are not intermediated because their assignment is not to exchange information, but to give advertising to. So there are some reminders of the things that we talked about in the previous part of the lesson. The information overload. So we are not able to live with so many information. We are affected by cognitive bias. Everyone faces some biases. There is an interesting bias called zero effect biases, which is the bias that makes people unaware of the bias that they suffer. So everyone has biases. And then remember that unique effect means that people that don't have enough skill tend to think that they are super expert in given topic, given task. Then there is the group polarization. We talked before about this. We are exposed always to the same theories because these theories are the things that are linked to our confirmation bias. We tend to form groups where the circulation always of the same ideas makes us more radicalized than in the past. For example, one of the examples that is used in discussing the death penalty. Student fact in the past have shown that if we divide people that believe in the death penalty from people that believe that are against the death penalty, and let them discuss. At the end of the discussion, even the most moderate of each groups becomes more radicalized and believes more strongly in the ideas. So the polarization brings to group polarization, and this is the effect of the fact that we are always exposed to the same news and the same information. Let's see into more detail what are fake news. It's referred to fabricated news, of course, based on things that are not true. And this is the reason they circulate. Someone wants to gain credibility or warns that someone else will lose credibility. Someone wants to make money just by spreading fake news, and we will see how important is the economic factor. Or, for example, because they want to destabilize an environment, we will see this, especially from the point of view of strategic communication. What are quantum conspiracy theories? Are usually built because they tend to explain an event or a situation in a way that leads to think that there is a conspiracy, there is someone which is doing something from secretly powerful actor that is acting undercover. And people who tend to lead to conspiracy theories are moved by three kinds of different needs. Cognitive, because they want to find an explanation for something that they cannot explain in another way. They want to be reassured of the fact that they have control of their life. And last but not least, from social point of view, if I believe in conspiracy theories, so you don't believe, I can think that I am more important than you, because I know the truth. You are not able to see what I can see. There are some common traits for people that believe in conspiracy theories. Low level of education, first of all, is one of the factors. They also have a situation of pre-anxiety because they think they feel themselves without power in front of what's happening in their life. So instead of accepting that things are going wrong without any explanation, they tend to have something that when the explanation, the stupid explanation is better than the explanation from their mental point of view. So they need certainty, even in situation of certainty is not possible to achieve. Another thing that's most important from the point of view of social media is the big data. As I told you, we have to collect our information. The number of data that the social media have now regarding each one of us is unbelievable. And it's really so rich now that they can use it for simulation about the behavior of people in certain situations using the technologies and the methods that are usually used in physics to simulate what happens in a given situation. And this is useful because from the point of view of advertising, they can understand correctly what kind of, or not only what kind of products you are interested in, but also the way it can be proposed. From the point of view of cost-benefit analysis, we have a theory that in Italian is called la teoria della montagna di meta, that translated into English the sheep mountain theory. Says that if we try to convince a person that is that believes in human fake news, the quantity of resources that we have to invest on this effort is not worth the result of convincing them. That's why it's so difficult to deal with fake news to combat with them. Because the quantity of resources that is needed to make the change is unsustainable by most of the organization of our modern era. And then we have another group of users which are very interesting creators, people that think that the internet and social media is a safe space where they can say everything, they can spread each kind of thought, be it racist or violent and so on. Those are creators. How to deal with them? It's very difficult to deal with them because we can't confront with the entire group of traders of the given so it's better to use smaller groups, but instead we can ban some of them from the discussion so the other understand that their behavior is not acceptable. This is a good idea, but it's not so visible from the point of view of public organizations. Because with cyber civil protection funds used from the page where they with certain kind of emergency. I don't think that the backfire is a good one. very bad response from the public opinion. Or we can inoculate in a group of haters, group of anti-haters that try to change the behavior of the people. It's always a thoughtful, expensive, and so on. Or trying to polarize the group itself just by moving, bringing some argument that will polarize a part of the group haters against another group of haters and let them fight against each other. Now, let's bring everything in the field of CBRNE emergency. What we need is information accuracy, information that must be accurate. We have to give this information as soon as we can, because the emergency time is one of the crucial factors. We must be empathic and open to the discussion, because this brings to a higher level of confidence. Now, once you have more confidence, people have more confidence in you, and your credibility is increased, we have an effective communication. Let's keep, first of all, the problem of the time and the number of information that we can. This is the time that passes. And this is the frequency of request of information. We have here the beginning of the emergency, and we see the demand of information for people that are involved grow in the very first moment of the emergency. Here is the curve that describes the quantity of information that we have. And usually at the beginning of the emergency, we don't have enough information to give. So there is all this space, that is the space that is at the disposal of people who want to occupy it, and we are confined in a more lower level of credibility, because the spaces of information are already taken by other actors. In the past, with the traditional mass media, the time that we had, someone else would occupy the space was 48 hours. So in the first 48 hours, we had time to find information, build our information strategy, and deploy it. With the advent of social media, now we have passed through the 2 hours, and now we are to the other 50. We have 15 minutes of time to gain control of that time, because before someone else will occupy the device. 15 minutes means that it's the time that person working near the emergency makes a picture and makes a post on the internet, on the social media events, and then it becomes viral and spread worldwide. What can we do in this hot 15 minutes? We have to tell something. Also tell that we are in the place, we are going to the place, we are trying to collect more information, and we will give an update in half an hour. The most important thing is not to leave space free for the others. We have to take this space for us. Of course, what is important for us if we use social media to communicate? And usually, if we have 15 minutes, social media cannot be ignored, because this is the fastest way of occupying space. We can think that we can have a conversation one-to-one on social media, and you can post, you can reply to But my answer to him can be read by other people. Other people can intervene on this. So the conversation is not one to many, not one to one, but it's, for example, many to many, because to the second answer can bring another actor to intervene just by confirming what we are saying. So there is a many to many conversation, which is very difficult to do. So what can we do in case of severe emergency? We must know the environment, so we must have good knowledge of the social media that we are using. And we know that TikTok has different kind of communication, your communication, respect to Facebook or Instagram or links. Not only the methods are different, but even the audience is different. On TikTok, maybe we are with comments on Facebook, on rumors, we are communicating with rumors, on Instagram, and so on. So we must be aware of the environment. We must know the subject that we are communicating. So we must be real expert that kind of emergency, because we must be able to give answer to every kind of questions that can be asked to us. And we must know our opponent. It means that we must know what are the narratives and what are the person, what are the organizations involved in the counter narrative that is against the reality that we are spreading. One of the most important things that we can do in this case is the reinterpretation. And it means that we must not give to every one of us, of our organization, to tell something about it. We must have someone which is in charge of the communication. And he is the only one which has the role of answering to the questions or giving information. I know that it's difficult when we are on the field, because there is the boss that wants to appear, there is someone that thinks that is a better communicator than the person which is done studies in communication, etc. So what I'm telling to the next generation of severe and emergency advisor is stress your bosses that they can understand that communication must be given to someone which is able to communicate. You need some expert that taking into in charge this kind of activity. Another thing, of course, we have thought until now of the communication on social media, but then is as well the communication on the field. The communication on the field, if you remember the film brain that I explained you this morning, there are three different layers. In different situations of the emergency, one of them is the leader. So in the very first moment, there is the fight or flight reaction. People that see an explosion usually tend to escape or tend to stand still. And they are driven by the lizard brain. If you want them to answer your communication, you have to communicate to the lizard brain. That's why in immediate moments before the emergency, you can scream to the people, stay here, go there, using direct and even violent speech to give them direction. Because you have to talk with lizard brain. They must, you can use fear. You can use fear to behave in a correct way. Not move if it's necessary to move, don't move if it's not necessary. But moments later, when acme of the emergency disaster. People which are involved are overwhelmed by emotions. In this case, it's useless to put them in sleep. So you can use the nurturing behavior, which is related to the attachment, which is one of the main jobs done by the mom. So you must reassure them, you must give them information in a more quiet way, as more empathic as possible. And then there is the third level, which is the level of communication for the audience, which are not involved in the emergency or that survived and now they are no more anxious and they don't suffer the consequences of the emergency. And then you can use rational thinking, trying to explain what's happening, trying to explain how the organization of the emergencies is working. It means that you have to create a communication plan for the emergency. And this communication plan for the emergency has to be the direction on the communication for the brain level, communication for the non-brain level, communication for the rational thinking level, brain cortex, and also describe what are the possible opponents to our counter-narrative in a situation of inter-emergency or an explosive emergency or a chemical emergency, because our enemies can be different. And we must know what are the type of company for the use. So the communication plan for the emergencies is aligned with the document that must be updated as soon as a new groups arise, as new narrative come into. Let's come back to our story of the hunter. Now we have imagined that our old hunter was talking to hunters. So it means that he was talking to people that were expert on the same field. But if your hunter wasn't talking to hunters, what would happen? Don't improve effect. Some of the targets are not so I'm able to deal with them, even if they are having pain. So thank you, target. And it brings us to talk about the scientific communication. Now, if you promise me that in 10 minutes you will be we make another otherwise it will be keep on.
Promise. Okay. Thank you. No, ma non vedi che magari sono comunque tu devi tornare in zona. Vieni questa cazzo di cane. No.
You look good for me.
My wife's not. So,
I will not wait for you.
No, it's fine. I mean, I will be in and out.
Okay.
Of course. Thank you. Sì.
Ok. Sì, me l'avevi detto. Da che giorno hanno... Dal 9 al 19, ok. Ok. Certo, sì. Dai. Ah, no, stiamo, non mi faccio la notte. Io faccio la notte. No, non che possiamo, nel senso, io faccio 2:30 sono di prima guardia e Mhm. E lì 5 sì, perfetto. Quale paese? Parli della piscina? Ah, ok, ok. Ok. Solo una cosa, in merito alla piscina. Quando esci? Ah, che sport, forse. Sicuramente mi sembra una scia da vedere. Probabilmente. No, no, non ce l'ho segnata. Per cose, no, io non ce l'ho segnata quella. La scia della piscina, della...
Ah no, studente moderno, boh.
Non ci può.
Quindi
Tanto sicuramente.
va a posto. E
Come, prega.
però sarebbe troppo che ci mette a fare non è più disposto. Sì, perché chi mi fa 10 in 12
Di questo già perché adesso mi invita a pranzo, a pranzo
anni
13 dicembre, 100 giorni.
13
Sabato.
sabato, perché qui c'ho delle biglietti di padre e delle motivi. Oh, non fa, ieri gli hai mandato il regalo, però ce l'avevo ieri perché durante la settimana io odiamo. Quindi sono andato non è che fa. Non qua, e ci sono delle buone tu hai distinti dei noi. Non qua.
Vabbè, è passato.
Capito? Quindi per forza no, ci vediamo, non so, non so, dici tu, invece provarlo, mi dice che non sono non tempo devi faccio, non che però decidere poi. Quindi quel segno di nascita. Bisogna dire che io ci rivedo dentro, vuole c'è anche una piena di 220 e faccio un video. E sarà una comunicazione di e non da. Mi metto se no. Non si penso che dice no perché può essere utile per l'emergenza di Vicente. Un esempio era la Bibbia, cioè se la Bibbia per carino, cioè di essere certo che devi vedere quello che è un chilometro. Cioè, O comunque per scrivere un articolo, dovevano scrivere, non so perché l'avevano indicato anche non sicura quando devo scrivere qualcosa di forza. Non sapete se mai detto, cioè mai detto, c'era un utilizzo a un certo punto con degli amici sulle nostre notizie sulle proprietà. E se tu riguardi i tornelli matematici, no? Se tipo che ne so, per la Granero che era diventato Prince, famoso perché aveva messo l'assioma, i collegamenti sono questi, no, e fino a grazie a Dio, però hai detto che l'assioma, non è che ti ho detto molto dicono la verità. Però dici, questo è diventato famoso all'inizio perché a te ti faccio. Magari è passato così, se era risolto, è passato in mezzo a raccontarci magari e faceva i motivi dei campi. Le azioni sono definiti come veri nuovi evidenti. E veramente sono questi, e tant'è vero che c'è stata una cosa figa in matematica, si chiama il programma di complessità di Kendall, che praticamente tu la matematica la fai su azioni, e le azioni vai in funzioni logiche e arriva a dimostrare che non so, sono evidenti, no, cioè la dimostrazione che però in completezza dice che tu più vai avanti e più dimostri cose complicate su quel set di azioni, arrivi a un certo punto, questo è anche che non hai abbastanza informazioni per decidere se la tua affermazione è vera o falsa. E tutte le scienze sono così. Veramente complesse che funziona su tutto. Quindi anche se fare una sentenza.
Terminata questo, perché a questo punto inizia proprio, cioè, rimane sempre nel dubbio che adesso me lo segno, quando qualcuno mi chiede per parlare,
No, devi muoia, quando tu muoia, accetto della domanda e cade di... Io non posso devi aggiungere azione. E se tu ci pensi, che ad esempio, in tasta, quando a un certo punto cerca di niente, questo è il sì, esatto, perché serve un altro metodo esatto. Però era cioè, pensa che non dovremmo ascoltare più. Chiedere, dovremmo di competenza di chiedere.
Come segni pure te,
Quando c'era una discussione, siamo arrivati al punto che non ci abbiamo. Io dici, guarda, secondo me non è decidibile. Non è decidibile. Se è vero o falso. Hai mandato un messaggio. Fammi che sì. In inglese capisco. Agli altri.
ma questo chi è che mi sta comunicando in questa della cacciata? Non vede nada. Prima stavo là, io quell'altro che sono stato subito.
Si vede che non viene caldo.
Tranquillo. Lo posso cambiare, questo dice
Vado, sì,
Okay. Okay. How we say in Italian, church? Okay. We ended the. Oh,
no, mi cercano le audio.
we ended the last session with the question, what happens if your counter is not talking to the runner? It means this is the typical situation that we have to deal with when we have an emergency, because we have to explain difficult things to people that have been not our the same level of knowledge or skill that we have. Typical example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, all the discussion regarding the measures taken, we need the mask, we don't need the mask, we need to stay away, we don't need to stay away, had to be explained to people. Yeah, that will be explained to people we don't have medical knowledge, so there was the need to find a way to communicate with them. In the past, the model of communication of scientific knowledge was mainly based on the continuity model. And there was a sort of path going from step to step in order to let something new theories or new discover reach the general audience. First of all, the theory was spread among a small group of experts that were working on the same topic. This is called so-called intra-specialistic communication, people which are involved in the same kind of research and exchange information. After a while, when the research is more robust, it's spread with the so-called interspecialistic group. Instead, if for example, the theory is medical theory, it can be spread to biologists or to chemists or people that are not medical doctors, but have some sort of common knowledge, and they can easily understand what the research is talking about. So the communication was built in a slightly different way in order to stress the information that were in the report outside the listening. Then there was the pedagogical group. It means that the research was spread to people that needed to learn the subject. Research for education on this, or even if they were simply interested in the topic. And in this case, the communication was aimed to people that had a certain level of knowledge, of basic knowledge. They could understand some concept of topics. The main thing is that they have the knowledge that they could understand what we were talking about. Last level is the popular level, where the research is presented to the general audience. In that case, the people use different language, maybe the interrogation of scientific journalists who were able to transform the specialistic language in a more general, widespread language that could be understood by everyone else. But, same as before, this intermediation has completely destroyed the continuity model, because there are no more controls between the specialistic and specialistic communication. It doesn't exist anymore. And my theory, which is published on one of the most important scientific papers, has the same visibility of documents written by someone else, which is not an expert in that, because no one controls the correctness of the theories. No one controls the credibility and the sustainability, the kind of methods that are used, and so on. So, when we are communicating to the general audience, because at the end, we see our goal is being charged in the case of emergency communication. The first thing that we can choose is the communicative tone. In the past, there was a so-called epic stand chain. It means that we had a number of persons we refer to. So, for example, if we had a problem with our friends, maybe we would ask to our friends how can we the situation if we have problems with work at home, homework. We would ask to the teacher if we wanted to understand what are the reasons for a political initiative we had our politician where we referred to. So we had a lot of agents that would cover different areas of our knowledge. And we knew perfectly who we had to deal with according to the topic that we are treating. Now, this thing has disappeared. So when we are on social media, we can't understand if that person is talking to us as a friend, or if it's a teacher, or if it's a politician. We don't have anymore this so-called epistemic chain. Because we are echo channels. There are critical bubbles that give us all the information, not that we want, but the information that makes us happy. Now we give you some example of the kind of stuff that we can use. According to transactional analysis, which is a huge field of study, when we talk about communication or interaction between persons, each person usually impersonates one of these three. We can see ourselves as parents. We can see ourselves as adults. We can see ourselves as children. And there are different couples of interaction between me and another person. I can interact with another which is a parent as well as me, so we are in the parent communication level. And so there are all these possible couples. According to transnational theory, the only two couples that work and make communication effective are the couple parent-child. It means that one of the two is the leader of the conversation, has the knowledge, and the other distance because he wants to learn something. Or both of them recognized as adults, so they are exchanging opinion, they are open to the other is open to my opinion, and we can discuss on an equal level on the theory or the argument we are talking about. All the other couples are not effective. For example, if I think I am the parent, so I know it, and you think you are the parent, we are in a situation of polarization. You will not give any credibility to what I'm saying because you understand and you are convinced that you have the truth. Your opponent doesn't have the truth. And the same thing happens to your opponent. So you will never have a truthful conversation. The same thing is children. No one of them is able to give information. They search for information, they don't find the other. I have two examples that in Italy are very famous of how this kind of communication has been put into place. One of them is no more effective as an example because recently the person is completely or almost completely abandoned Facebook and passed on another platform. The first one is Burioni. Burioni is been very overexposed during the COVID-19 pandemic in the days, still overexposed now. He can communicate well, it wasn't many appearances in the online TV. But what is interesting is what he says on his Facebook page. In his Facebook page, he says that he is talking as an university professor. And the audience is the class, its classroom. So if they come to his page to understand and learn something, they are welcome and the communication will go. Burioni in this post gives its rules in a very complete and clear way. Person that thinks that they can interact with him on an Italian basis level are excluded from the conversation. So in this case, Burioni is describing a couple parent, Guglielmo, children, all the others. Second example, Gucci. Gucci is a researcher, he writes for the scientific part of the journal. And I like this, this phrase about, in God we trust, others must bring it data. He is depicting adult to adult conversation. So he's open to talk with the others on the same level of credibility. But only if the people that is talking to him has the same level of knowledge. If you bring me their data, we can talk about everything. But if you bring just Spanish theories that are grown in your mind, or don't have scientific basis, I will not talk to you. So if we are able to create our style of conversation, our style of communication, in order to describe exactly what is the role of our audience, we are able to let the audience obey to our statement, the communication will be effective. Difficult, I know. We only butcher two examples of lots of people that try to make some scientific communication on difficult topics during COVID-19, but they were able to do it. And they were successful for the audience that way they were aiming to. Of course, when we talk about scientific communication for a general audience, we have to keep in mind that there are cognitive bias. In particular, especially during COVID-19, there were these three kind of biases that were very important. First one is the substitution bias. This is very general, it's very important. Usually, when we are asked to perform a task or give an answer to a question that is beyond our capability, we tend to substitute that question with another one which is still there first. Why? Because we save energy, because we are not able to activate correctly system to develop thinking and so on. So, instead of understanding of answering to the question, and it's possible to do different theories, which one of them is more obvious? We usually tend to answer to the question, which of the two persons that are talking about the theories is the one I like the most. And we tend to accept the theory of the people that it's more, we like more. Another one is the delayed answer bias. We know that when we deal with a pandemic, there is a so-called incubation time, then there is the time of the illness, and then the result of the illness. It can be death or can be survival. And all these things happen in different moments. So, pandemic is usually a phenomenon that has to do with the life of answers. I can be sick now, but yet the effect of my sickness will become visible in 5 days. And the result will be in 15 days. So, if I give on the same Excel the information, today we have had 10 new people with COVID. And then we take the same internet data, and one person died. What are we comparing to a person which suffers from bad Alzheimer's? COVID-19 is not so bad. 90% of people survive. It's wrong, because the person that died is not part of the same set of people that treat COVID. It's related people to COVID. This was a mistake that has been done for a long period of time until the contamination. Put together information that were not so easily understood by general audience. faster if they understood the business well, but a lot of. And the other problem is related to the exponential growth bias, which is the inability for people to understand how fast are exponential phenomena. If we say that at this moment 25% of the lake is polluted and the pollution doubles each day, watch one person that doesn't understand the figure of exponential bias. No, okay, we have a lot of time. Still 75% of the lake which is safe, and it took 10 days to arrive to the 25%. In reality, it's only done just 2 days. So, the difficult to understand how fast are exponential phenomena is brings people to not correctly understand how important, how difficult and dangerous the situation of pandemic is. So, what we can do when we build the communication? We have to choose a good data visualization. Of course, must be based upon reliable basic information. We have to choose a correct graphic design in order to highlight the most important trends. So maybe a graphic design is more captivating from the point of view of the viewer or from an aesthetic point of view, but doesn't point out the real thing that we want to convey to the attention of the person. So the aesthetic does not push towards superficiality. And we must, in any case, be honest and clear. Last but not least, we have to be able to give some in-depth view of the phenomenon. Is required if you want to explain more deeply what is happening. So, what are the choices for the communicator? Choose when to use absolute values rather than percentages. Some things percentages are better, in some cases not. Because we deal with, for example, with the problem of the framing that happens. If we want to stress in the people the need to act instead of following them to be quiet, we can choose the kind of framing that obtains the correct reaction from our audience. Always framing. If we say 7% of those infected die, there's a different effect than saying 1% of people survive. Then we can choose the graphical aspect. We can choose this. We can choose this. It depends what we want. I put this one here because this is the most wrong graph that you use. You use 3D pie graphs and you don't put them horizontally. There is a distortion on the others of the different results, and it can bring to misunderstanding with the audience. And then we can choose also the timeline of the observation that we want to share with them. Initial values are very important because if we can, according to the initial value that we choose, there are different interpretation of the same graph. Here we start from 0, and we can see that all the results are quite similar. If we start from 82, we can think that the difference between result E and result C is huge. It's not. Cherry picking, it's typical strategy that is used by fake news spreaders. According to the correct choice of timeline of choice of values, we can cut our observation in order to reinforce our narrative. This is the phenomenon in its entire lifespan. This is the life of the phenomenon if we just take the first part of the phenomenon itself. The first slide, we see that phenomenon is growing. In the second one, we can see that the phenomenon is going down. So if we choose, we don't have to choose. If a fake news spreader chooses even an interval of data, he can perform the so-called cherry picking and find the data that confirm their erroneous and fake narrative. Framing, we have talked about in before. Just gave you three possible cases that give the same information. 99% of Roman adolescents not commit serious act of crime. We think all the youngsters are good people. If we say that we 1% of Roman adolescents commit serious act of violence, there is just a little bit of alignment in our mind. But if we say that 3,000 Roman teenagers commit suicide, 1,000, the huge number, and even if 99% of them are good people, in the sense of alignment, the genetic province can be built at the higher level. Another important thing is when we have to deal with conditional probabilities. For example, we use some swab to understand if a person is infected or not, and the level of reliability is 90%. So there is the 10% of false positive and there is a 10% of false negative. Let's suppose we have thousands of sick people. The result will be that we have 990 results of persons that are not sick, 10% of persons that are sick. And at the end, as we have a conditional result, we have 108 persons false positive and positive, real positive, that are result positive for our test. But as there is 90% of reliability, 99 of people that result sick, they are not sick in the reality. So this is an important thing that we have to convey. Even when we give information, we have the result of the swab, 108 people that are sick. We must add the information about the reliability of the instrument that we are using. So we expect that of the result of 108 positive results, the real sick people are just 9 because the other are false positive. So the result of the swab that is being used as an absolute value and undoubtable value was not really correct because it needed some correction regarding the level of the reliability of the swabs. And another important thing is the error margin, which of you is a scientific background knows how important is the error margin when we deal with the result. For example, here we study how many people are unemployed are in Rome, and we see that this number is increased by 3,000 people. But the confidence interval is 3,000 plus or minus 22,000. We can't give correct information. What information can we get from it? The level of unemployed is increased or is reduced? what the results can in reality be real. So if we don't convey the error margin, or if we don't take it into consideration it to extract the piece of information that we are doing, maybe we are spreading fake news and we don't know it is fake. So the error margin must always be taken into account. And I will say before giving the information, because if it doesn't give enough information to make a clear statement, it's better not telling it. And then there is the usual problem of the understanding what is correlation and what is causal. We know that correlation is the result of some calculations. Otherwise, causal means that there is a link between two different phenomena. There is even a site on the internet that gives an example of a false correlation. For example, if you eat more mozzarella cheese, there will be more civil things in the sense of there are many nice example of the fact that correlation doesn't mean that's what you. If you want, I can give you an example even more important. In the beginning of the 19th century, they made a study on the American Army regarding the level of the fuel IQ of the soldiers. And the result of this study was that people with white skin were very and more intelligent than people with black skin. So they say that the color of the skin was because of the results of the test. But later studies discovered that people performance was because black people performed more because in the beginning of the 19th century, they all came from a situation of poor literacy and not level of education. So the cause of the result was not the color of the skin, but was the fact that they were not as good educated as white people were. In fact, they compared the results with people with having the same level of education, the results getting to be the same. So the incorrect misunderstanding of correlation into very wrong assumptions. And then we come to the scientific publication. Each one of you knows that in publishing, this is just the first step of the research, because the result of the research becomes scientific too. If your research has can be replicated by someone else, it leads to the same result, and the laboratory conditions are good, etc. So, for people that are used to dealing with scientific publication with scientific dialogue, this thing is given as granted. But for people that don't understand it, if you make it public, something is published on the scientific that becomes the reality, becomes the truth. The famous research of the correlation between autism and vaccine comes from one of these problems. Of course, the scientific publication was not the responsible for the scientific publication was not present when you were doing the exams or the experiments. So they give for granted that you work in a certain way, and they can just say the method that you have used in this way is for the problem. the effectiveness of the result will be granted by successive and subsequent researches made by others. For the general audience, it doesn't work this way. So this is very difficult for them to understand that even if they find a scientific publication that gives the result that confirm their confirmation bias, there may be so many others that are against it. The scientific application can be proven wrong even after just a week or just 2 days, that it cannot be taken as undoubtable truth. The problem is way more difficult now because there are scientific predatory publishing activity. So people that publish, so pseudo-scientific research, if we just pay money, they don't need even a formal control on what you are writing. And most of these fake research are spread on a variety of sites that link one each other. So even if you go to the internet and try to find a research, let me see if this theory is widespread or is just something that someone says. You will find so many results that confirm that if you are not able to understand the credibility and the reliability of the source that you are consulting, you can be fooled by the result, and they can take forward through something that is not confirmed. Okay, let's come back to our story. Now, let's suppose that the whole under belongs to another tribe, and it's not part of the tribe when it's telling its story. If you are one of the tribe, what will you think? Is it true what he's saying? He's trying to not be very visible. He has an agenda. He wants us to be treated by the cyber. We can take on them that we are saying. So there is the problem of the so-called malicious communication. This is the pyramid of disinformation. There is someone that builds the fake news, and then uses legitimate or not completely legitimate tools and services to spread it. And then there are the content consumers that spread the fake news just because it, for example, confirms its belief that it's racist images. So people can be part of the spreading of fake news, even if they don't take any advantage of spreading fake news. And sometimes they are not aware of the fact that they are spreading fake news. What happened during the COVID-19 pandemic? This is a research made in the United States, and they found out that there were just 12 persons that were responsible for more than 70% of the fake news regarding vaccine content on Facebook, with 22 organizations working for them, more than 150 employees, and $36 million of our annual revenues, and an estimated billion audience of 62 million of followers. And it means that 62 million of followers can create up to 1.1 billion of revenue from advertising. So these are the numbers we are talking about. What are the sources of income? First of all, the donation from their followers. Either was one that collected money because he wanted to to buy a molecular microscope and people living money to buy it. They say there are alternative products that are better than the official products for situation. They organize meeting, so they take money from people that want to listen to the speakers. They can be speakers and these events organized by others. Of course, they come from the internet arts because they have 6 billion of products, so they bring a lot of visibility to the public. But the difficult to believe thing is that they also receive government fund. Why? Because if you have 6 million of followers, you have a problem. There is always people interested in votes instead of interested in the political environment. Now, let's talk about the organization of the meetings. I just cancelled the surnames here because I don't have spend on lawyers and so on. But just see, Andrew was speaker in event 1, speaker in event 2. I was promoter of the event 3. At the event 3, the speakers were there, Joseph, Tai. What does it mean? They were organizing an event. They reinforced each other. They have been to make I just want to underline the name Robert. This person now is a very, 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 very important role in the Trump administration. There are many forms of counteraction. For example, they often use pay for the force in order to be more inclusive. Social media have plans for the people that want to first use something. So if you make a label, this is a prepaid content, it's can be published. We can deplatform them, for example, we can no longer a profile on Facebook, or your content will not be monetized according to the ads that we are using your content. There are many of these that in theory would be performed. And this is fine.
Generally speaking, in Sweden, we have the opposite reaction because when you try to ban or demonetize and so on, you have all the followers that start to say, okay, it is a government ban to buy the true one.
Or it's something because I'm part of the expert for counteract species for you see the laws that the government social media in European Commission level, they say that the platform must give access to control, must cooperate to stop misinformation, and so on. These are not effective because we are asking the people that make the big money, it's into sense. Of course, they are not effective. In any case, that's why it was built infodemic management. First of all, let's start with the definition of infodemic, which is the overabundance of information. Good or bad, I want to stress this point, that makes it difficult for people to understand which decision they to take. Good or bad means that the quantity itself of information is a problem because it leads to information overload. So the overabundance of information, even if it was good information, will create a problem for people supposed to treat it. Some of these definitions were already given. We have just a difference in the concept of misinformation and disinformation. That, for example, in Italy, we use disinformation as just one comprehensive word. In English, there is a difference because misinformation is the spread of false information without knowing that it is malicious information. So we are not making something in order to damage someone. If there is the intent to damage someone that's only spread some fake news, in that case, we talk about disinformation. See how these from 1916 to 2016, I particularly like this confrontation. The difference here is the speed. It goes with the newspaper that brings and contains the news regarding related to something that happened if they are lucky and they are a day before. Maybe they are looking live to a video of something that is happening just right now. So in virtual space, the infodemics is a problem more than just dealing with the common traditional mass media. How to stop this information would be easier if someone just with people in presentation of thinking and correct behavior. So if there is a new, this person doesn't spread the fake news because it's just something that arrived from my source. It's not so reliable. This person didn't spread it because it double checked the fact and found out that it was not true. This other person got news from a trusted source, and so on. This behavior are not so revolutionary. They are not so. But of course, they are not so widespread. No one uses this attention when dealing with fake news. We have already talked about information overload. Just to remind you that probably said social media are in a push situation, so we are not able to escape from information unless we abandon the social media. Social media platform are built in such a way that the power level of engagement is so strong, it's very difficult from a common point of view to abandon it. We have to remember always the presence of cognitive biases. Regarding the forensic management related to medical emergencies, we have to remind the late answer bias, the exponential growth bias, and also there is another one, which is the order of magnitude bias. It's difficult for our mind to understand how scaled the situation when we moved from talking about hundreds of people moving to talk about thousands of people. We are not able to understand how dramatically has changed the situation with the exchange of the overall. Of course, the problem is that there are too many voices. Someone that says it like a flu. These are all places that were really saved during this community by Italian researchers or in London. This one uses can disappear, created a lot of problems in our in our nation. If you wonder what these people, they don't exist. They were generated by this site. So this, for example, is one of the tools that can use to create fake profiles that fake news spreader can use to spread the fake information. Another problem is related to the role of the journalist when they have to deal with the science, because the problem is born by the fact that they are not able to explain what are the basics of the science, how it works. They are just interested of talk to people and have as much audience as possible. So it's difficult for them, for example, to explain the difference between something which is possible and something that is probable. Something possible is possible if even there's just the 0.00001% to happen. Probable is that things will never happen. But when we invite a person to publish research that thinks that something is possible, and we confront them with the science, and the possibility of the second term is so low, we have to understand that giving the right of audience to the two different positions is not good information. Information is when we give visibility to those who is deserving, and not to just all the kind of possible theories that spread word. The problem is related with how the world of communication works, because newspaper and paper are already like there are a few newspapers that can still exist, and some of them exist less because there is aid from the government. So they rely more so on their online version, and because this online version can give them revenues coming from the advertising. How does the advertising works? Through a mechanism called the click-through rate. It means that if you give a title to me, and the person clicks on the clips and opens the page where there is the link in the advertising, you gain some money. If people just read the title, but doesn't go on, you don't get anything. So what's important? It's important that when the person makes a research on the internet or search engines, the result that this is gives us a good position. So it's more probable that the person will choose our the link that links to our page. What is the result? They need to have sensational titles that sometimes are not real. They are not same of the things that is said in the part of the article. As there is a lot, way more people that don't click the button to read the news. This kind of mechanism is one of the most important way to spread fake news or to give people misinformed and mislead information. Information management is similar to the pandemic management. There is the part regarding the surveillance that for an epidemic manager means listening to that narrative that in case of the pandemic can come into light. Then there is the arrival of the virus, and for us it means the arrival of habits. Then there is the disease, and for us there is the destruction of the communication fields. And then there is the intervention to mitigate the pandemic and the intervention to mitigate the misinformation and disinformation. Do you remember when we talked about cost-benefit analysis? I mentioned you the theory of the shift. One of the key pillars of economic management is that we have to focus on people which are undecided. So we are fighting for the undecided. Our work is to give the undecided the correct information and teach them how to behave in a correct way. For example, here we see the situation of 100 million of Facebook users regarding the vaccination during the COVID-19 pandemic. There is a part of pro-vax, a part of anti-vax, and the green ones are the ones who are undecided. From the point of view of the emergency, it's terrible. But it means also that even if we fight for the undecided, we can do the difference for the biggest part of users. Yes, there is a link that because we usually take this kind of graph in order to have to describe even the polarizations. So if you see here, the distance between the two dots is less when they will share the same content, follow the same pages, and you see all the anti-vaxxers here or the pro-vaxxer there. It means that they don't have problem. It is another proof of the fact that there is polarization, that the algorithm works in such a way that it creates group chambers filter bubbles. So, in practical words, what can we do? The timeline of the our intervention. What can we do before the pandemic, during the emergency, and after the emergency, possible even to prepare for a new one. Before the pandemic, we can work on the pre-banking. Pre-banking is one of the tools that is shown to be more effective to deal with this information. And it means that we want to teach people not something regarding the emergency itself, but the mechanisms that are behind the fake news spread. That site that is here, Get the News, gives to the user the opportunity to trade a program. First of its call to impersonate the editor of the fake news page. And it asks it gives him some possibility of choice. For example, what kind of news would you like to publish on your site? And it gives you the opportunity to understand what are the most useful tones to use, tones that will be clear instead songs that are meta and so on. Just by answering to this question, the person understands how fake news spreaders read their news, they spread it, and why they are effective. And you can see that the results before the impersonation and after the impersonation of the person of their ability to understand if this is a fake news or is a real one has improved a lot. So it's very, very, very effective. And it's the first thing that we have to solve. It moves our attention to another level of intervention. We are not working on the news related to the emergency. We are working on the ability of people to understand how fake news work. And so they are more resistant when exposed to fake news. And they will act in such a way that just by using their own ability, they will be our ally in our fight against fake news. During the pandemic, what can we do? We call it the banking. It means that you have to give to the person that are undecided the sources that are reliable, information that are good, exemplified, robust, and most of all, our kind of communication must be raised in such a way that communication itself is effective. You must remember, it's not enough to give the correct information. We need to give our correct information in such a way that it captures the attention of the audience more than what is done by the fake news. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, those were a list of sites that could be used. We must take into account that when we are working on the field, this is not a one-time thing. We have to deal with a strategy of self-improvement and adaptation to what happens in reality. For example, I don't know if you know the daily cycle, plan, do, check out. So we plan what we have to do, we do this thing, then we check if we have effectiveness of the actions that we have taken, and then we act in order to make the second step and build more effective second lap of intervention. The most important part, of course, is monitoring. Usually we use surveys or we use indicators. Surveys, some are questions that we ask directly to our audience. Of course, we must be aware of the fact that the framing can affect the result of the and the quality of the answer that we are collecting, or the use of key performance indicator that must be quantitative, which means that the result must be numerical. And of course, the phenomenon that we are using must be measurable and must be meaningful for the event that we are interested in. So we have to choose correctly the indicator to use. This was the example that I made this morning regarding the framing effect when building the questionnaire. You have to be aware that the order of the questions doesn't lead to correlation between question, the answer to the question to answer to the other one. And we must be careful also with the KPI. For example, if we are interested in measuring temperature as a key performance indicator, temperature has many different meanings. We are only measuring the average temperature. It can be good for some reason, it can be good for us. For example, if we are measuring it because very interested in the result of a chemist experiment, the average is not good because of if there is a peak in some point, the result of the experiment will fail. So For the same thing that we are going to measure, there are many performance indicators that we can choose from. Our choice must be made and proactive. What can we do? What can we do for the future? This is not something that is on our shoulders, but must be done. We must bring people to have enough skills regarding the rational thinking, the logic, using the logic, using the system too. And it's something that belongs to political, high level sector. They have to build different educational environment and make modification in the field. It's not so strange in many countries that are, particularly those that are near the Russian borders, have already done this many years ago, because they know that they needed people to understand which kind of information was reliable and which was not. In any case, what we want to achieve usually is behavioral change. We want people to understand how to behave in a given situation. So, for example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, people had to respect the social distancing, wear masks when needed, to get the vaccine was available, wash hands in a proper way, and so on. But people change behavior only in event situation. This is the called behavioral model. We have from the X the ability to perform change, from the Y the motivation to change it, and when the ability required is not so much, and the motivation is enough high, and we are in this area, it's easier to achieve a behavioral change from this person. If the ability to change the quality is too much, even if we are more highly motivated, we will not change our behavior. I make an example. If we are highly motivated, take a vaccine, but there is not an inoculation point near our house, we have to take our car. We have to drive for 3 hours, then make it in 2 hours long before having our smoke. But maybe that even with the higher motivation, we will not behave in such a way to the public in the vaccine. Here is another important topic. The lack of trust of people on what we are saying as government or as a public administration means that those people can be influenced by others. I'll give you a practical example. In March 22, 3/4 of the Italian population thought that the help that we received from the European Union was not adequate. In June 2020, the same situation was present in most of European countries. So what it means that their perception of the behavior of the European Union was negative. In Italy and in Spain, that perception of negative behavior from the European Union affected more than 50% of people. And of course, with the lot of the London situation became worse and worse again. What did it bring? It brings to a possibility for China and Russia to intervene in order to change the perception of the European Union in countries that government are hostile. So these are the results of the various agencies that work on communication. We see that even the highest level of person or agencies that are trustworthy, that doesn't go beyond the two seconds. So it's a lot of space for them to influence the society, because there is one type of the person that can be brought to behave in an unsatisfactory manner. And we know that wrong behaviors during related to it. So what is important is to work in order to gain more trust. But why usually the trust in the institution is not in the institution? Because there were many changes in the itself of trust, in the mechanism that can bring us to build trust in other people. In the past, the trust was something that was related to the local situation. There was a village, we already knew who was the robber of the village, who was the student of the village, who was the patrol of the village. We didn't need a strong institution that was trustworthy for us, and we had to rely on it to understand on how we have to do it when dealing with other people. But with the advent of commercialization, commerce, and industrial revolution, so the markets began spreading. There was the need of institution that offered this grant of the reliability among people or organizations that were very long distance with one each other. There was a very long distance, for example, company at the beginning to deal with the merchants from merchants from China or India or so on. So there was the need of an institution at the center that was able to give trust to the people involved in their relationship. Now, we are in a world where the trust is built in a distributed mode. What does it mean? It means that if we are following a Uber driver, the reliability of that Uber driver is not given by our government, but is given by the feedback that other users gives to it. And even if Uber driver knows it, we have a reliable client, so we have difficult clients. So the same happens when the Uber driver leaves starts class. So that's why the institution now are not longer so trustworthy, because it has changed the model through which the trust can be used. So all the communication infrastructure that the institution is put into place and that have been effective until 40 years ago are no longer effective. They must be changed. And they must be changed in such a way that they must be as much as possible similar to the distributed trust system that we have now. It's very difficult to it's very difficult to imagine how our organization had to change in order to be similar, for example, to the model, to the Uber model, or to the IKEA model, or the Amazon model. But some studies have seen that there are 7 key for success in building trust. And these 7: access, contract, incentive, mitigation, intermediation, transparency, and control. For example, the control means that people that are not trustworthy when and buying from the system, the system that build the robustness of trust. What is interesting is that to have a successful organization, we don't need to respect all these 7 principles. It's enough to respect 3 or 4 of them. So, until our organization will understand how to build this kind of organization, I think that the trust of the citizen in our organization will not be so robust as we need in the case of emergency. As I told you before, the lack of trust in the European Union means for hostile actors that there is a chance to do something that gain some advantages. So, what did they do? They took advantage. And this is what happened in Russia. January 2020, they began to say that the COVID-19 was spread by the USA because they wanted to gain a certain advantage. In February, it became viral because they used Zirinovsky, they made the claim. There was the amplification from proxy sites. They have people in each country that take their narrative and invisibly do it. So the narrative begins to spread on social media and so on. These are the steps that they made. Communication by official government, message sponsored by the state, the involvement of proxy sources in the countries that were the target of their content narrative, the weaponization of social media, and the use of cyber to improve the strength of the communication. Now it's time is over. So I will say stop here. It's useless to go forward. I just want to tell you something regarding the effectiveness of the involvement of social media and contrasting the spread of fake news. Many studies have shown that even if there were messages that were signaled as a fake news to the platform, the rate of cancellation of deletion of these messages was really low. There are studies that see that fake news don't let you change your mind. They let you polarize if you already have some belief that is confirmed by the fake news that others. I want to see if I find that. No, I don't. I can find. There's been a huge psychological study. It has found that there are 7 different kinds of personalities of people belonging to social media activities. And of these 7 activities, or 7 different profiles, just 2 of them can be really influenced by fake news. The other ones are safe, more or less stable. So we can think that the impact of fake news is relatively low because this part of people are resistant. But think of what happens in a situation where we have, for example, the Brexit. There are 2 different groups, and the difference between the groups is very, very low. So it's enough that low level of influence to change the results of the Brexit referendum. The same things happen in the United States, where the election of the president is decided in the so-called swing states, and where the difference is minimal from an election. So even the small influence people to fake news can have a greater impact on the democratic life of our society. And that's what I wanted to repeat. I have material for 16 hours of
For his material, so you can study by yourself and go deeper.
It's on your
You are better now. You can do this alone. At lunch break, see you here at 2 sharp, please.
No, questo è chiaro, non dico la questione della divisa, perché io in capo delle scusa, ma posso lasciare qui? No, ma poi per noi due, voi alla fine va bene, voi che ti frega, però tu questa è la migliore camicia che c'ho. Che poi non hai portato io così stato chiaro la nostra e comunque la strada però si fa quello scopre questa quindi racconti non so cioè non c'è niente ma non proprio mai grazie faccio un salto in bagno.
prepara la valigia, richiamata.
Aspetta, non è mi sa che su
Non tocca
sì, sa. Ah. Ok, perfetto. Allora così. L'altra no, adesso mi arriva.
Gente che mi scrive, io non sì.
Ah, ok. Allora.
No, no, no.
Ah, perché è ingegneria. Zette.
Vieni, ci manda.
Ah, perché del Politecnico 1, perché mi sa credo che il driver mi diceva ma che sapeva che doveva pensare.
Sì. E non lo lasciamo. Ah, perché?
Ah, va bene, e adesso... Ah, ok, ok. Allora ora ci organizziamo magari per venire in macchina. Va bene, grazie.
Ma è deficiente però.
Pure lui.
Chi gli ha detto?
Lui ha detto io ho detto io, vi lascio dire uno, perché ho dato per assunto che se dov'era la lezione precedente.
Siamo là, medicina no.
Che devo
Vabbè,
ma no, guarda di-
ma io per pranzo, questa mattina si è cafeteria lo stesso.
no, la prossima.
Ciao, madonna, c'è una banalizia. Infatti non ho finito, non può. Fidati, fidati.
Grazie.
Ciao, ogni tanto. Ci mandiamo sempre il solito attestato di docenza. Ah. Che non ho fatto. Non so da dove cominciare. Dai, ho finito. Non c'è stato finito. Dopo mi referenze, poi ma niente. Ma non è fatto le messaggi. Sì, sì. E dobbiamo vedere in divisa? Immagini. Perfetto, non... No, sì, 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 arresta.